A 17-year-old black girl is handcuffed and dragged from first class while other passengers watch in silence. But the officer has no idea whose daughter he just put his hands on. You stole this ticket, and we both know it. The metal cuffs clicked around her small wrist so tightly that her fingers went numb, and gasps rippled through the cabin as passengers pulled out their phones. Alicia Morgan's whole body trembled, tears streaming down her face as she tried to explain, but her voice came out in broken whispers that nobody seemed to hear. Officer Ryan Caldwell stood over her with his chest puffed out, one hand on his gun, his face red with authority as he yanked the teenage girl to her feet like she was a criminal he'd been hunting for years. What he didn't know was that in exactly 8 minutes, his career, his pension, and his freedom would all be on the line. Please, I didn't do anything wrong. Alicia's voice cracked as Officer Caldwell jerked her toward the aisle. Save it for the station. His grip on her arm was bruising. We got a report that someone used a stolen credit card to buy this ticket. You're 17, sitting in first class on a flight to Washington, D.C., and you expect me to believe you paid for this yourself. My dad bought it. I told you. My dad, your dad. Caldwell laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Right. Let me guess. He's a doctor? A lawyer? You people always have the same story. You people. The words hung in the air like a slap. Alicia was a senior at Douglas Academy, a private school in Atlanta. She had a 4.3 GPA. She'd been accepted early decision to Howard University. She volunteered at a food bank every Saturday and sang in her church choir on Sundays. And now she was being arrested in front of a plane full of strangers who looked at her and saw exactly what Officer Caldwell saw. A young black girl who must have done something wrong. Officer, maybe you should verify her story before an elderly white woman in 2B started. I need you to stay out of this. This is police business. A black businessman in 3A stood up. She's a child. You don't need to manhandle her like that. Caldwell's hand moved to his weapon. Sir, sit down. Now, or I'll arrest you for interfering with an officer. The man sat down slowly, his jaw tight with helpless rage. Alicia tried one more time. Officer, please, just call my father. His name is, I don't care if his name is Barack Obama. You're coming with me. Caldwell pushed her toward the front of the plane. She stumbled, her handcuffed hands unable to catch her balance, and fell against the seat. Pain shot through her shoulder. Get up. Caldwell barked. I'm trying. Alicia sobbed. He yanked her upright by the cuffs, and she cried out. The flight attendant, a young Latina woman named Sophia, stepped forward. Officer, I was here when she boarded. She had a valid ticket, a valid ID, and you're not a law enforcement officer, so your opinion doesn't matter. Caldwell cut her off. Now step aside, or you're obstructing justice. Sophia's hands shook, but she moved. But this was only the beginning. They were in the jetway now. Alicia's legs barely worked. She was shaking so hard she thought she might throw up. Behind her, she could hear passengers murmuring, could feel their phones trained on her like weapons. Tomorrow, she'd be a hashtag. Another black teenager arrested. Another viral video. Another news cycle where people would debate whether she deserved it or should have complied better. Where's your phone? Caldwell demanded. In my bag. On the plane. Convenient. No phone. No way to prove your story. He radioed to someone. Yeah, I got her. Bringing her to the security office now. 17-year-old black female, suspected credit card fraud and identity theft. I didn't steal anything. Alicia's voice finally found strength. My name is Alicia Morgan. My father purchased this ticket for me 3 days ago. If you just check the credit card records, we will check. And when we confirm it's stolen, you're going to juvie. Caldwell pushed her into the airport security office, a small room with fluorescent lights and the smell of stale coffee. Another officer was waiting, a white woman in her 50s named Officer Janet Pierce. She looked at Alicia with something that might have been sympathy. Ryan, did you verify her story? Don't need to. Got a report from the airline that this ticket was flagged for fraud. Who reported it? Gate agent. Said a girl this young shouldn't have a first-class ticket to D.C. unless something's wrong. Janet frowned. That's not really probable cause for Janet. I've been doing this for 12 years. I know fraud when I see it. He pushed Alicia into a chair. Stay there. Don't move. Alicia's wrists were throbbing. The handcuffs were too tight, cutting off circulation. Her fingers were starting to tingle. Officer Pierce, she whispered. Please, the cuffs are too tight. Janet looked at Caldwell. Ryan, loosen them. She's not going anywhere. She's a flight risk. She's 17 and weighs maybe 110 pounds. Loosen the cuffs. Grudgingly, Caldwell adjusted them. Barely. Thank you, Alicia whispered. Janet knelt down to her eye level. Honey, what's your father's name? Finally, someone was listening. James Morgan, Alicia said. He works in D.C. I was flying up to visit him for the weekend. He bought the ticket on his corporate credit card. What does he do? Doesn't matter what he does, Caldwell interrupted. We'll verify the credit card information, and when it comes back stolen, this conversation is over. He pulled out his laptop and typed in the ticket information. Alicia watched him, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The ticket was legitimate. She knew it was. Her dad had bought it the same way he always did when she visited. Through his work account, first class because he wanted her comfortable, no expense spared because she was his baby girl. Caldwell's face changed as he read the screen. What is it? Janet asked. The credit card. He frowned. It's registered to a James Morgan. Corporate account for Department of Justice. Janet stood up quickly. Department of Justice. Could be fake. Could be. Ryan, call the number on the account. Now. If only he knew who he was about to call. Caldwell dialed the number with visible reluctance. It rang twice before a woman answered. Office of the Deputy Attorney General. How may I direct your call? Caldwell's expression flickered with something that might have been doubt. Yes, this is Officer Ryan Caldwell with Hartsfield-Jackson Airport Police. I'm trying to verify a credit card transaction for a James Morgan. One moment, please. The hold music was classical, official, very government. Alicia watched Caldwell's face go from confident to uncertain to pale. A man's voice came on the line. Deep, authoritative, familiar. This is Deputy Attorney General James Morgan. Who am I speaking with? Alicia's eyes closed. Dad. Caldwell cleared his throat. So, this is Officer Ryan Caldwell, Airport Police at Hartsfield-Jackson in Atlanta. I'm calling to verify a ticket purchase made on a corporate credit card registered to you. What ticket purchase? A first-class ticket from Atlanta to Washington, D.C., purchased 3 days ago for. He checked his notes. Alicia Morgan. Silence on the other end. Then, that's my daughter. What's this about? So, we had a report that the ticket might be fraudulent. Fraudulent? I bought that ticket myself. Is there a problem? Caldwell glanced at Alicia, who was staring at him with red-rimmed eyes and tear-stained cheeks. Sir, we detained your daughter based on a report from. You detained her. The temperature in James Morgan's voice dropped to Arctic levels. You detained my 17-year-old daughter. For what? Suspected credit card fraud, sir. But now that we've verified, where is she? She's here in the security office. Is she handcuffed? Caldwell hesitated. Sir, it's standard procedure when. Is she handcuffed? Yes, sir. Take them off, right now, and put me on speaker. Caldwell fumbled with the phone, his hands suddenly unsteady. He clicked the speaker button. James Morgan's voice filled the small office. Alicia, baby, are you there? Daddy. Her voice broke on the word. I'm here, sweetheart. Are you hurt? I'm okay. I'm scared, but I'm okay. Did anyone put their hands on you? Alicia looked at the bruises already forming on her arm where Caldwell had grabbed her. At her raw wrists. At her shoulder that still throbbed from when she'd fallen. Would you have told the truth in her position, knowing it might make everything worse? He grabbed my arm really hard, and I fell when he was pulling me off the plane. And the handcuffs were too tight, but Officer Pierce made him loosen them. The silence on the other end of the phone was more terrifying than shouting would have been. When James Morgan spoke again, his voice was deathly calm. Officer Caldwell, I'm going to say this once. You're going to remove my daughter's handcuffs immediately. You're going to escort her to the Delta Sky Club. You're going to ensure she gets on her flight, which I assume you delayed. And then you're going to wait for me to arrive, because I'm getting on the next plane to Atlanta. Sir, with all due respect, there is no respect. You arrested a teenage girl for the crime of flying first class while black. You put your hands on her. You traumatized her in front of a plane full of people. And now you're going to face the consequences. Janet Pierce stepped forward. Sir, this is Officer Janet Pierce. I'll personally escort your daughter to the Sky Club and make sure she's taken care of. Thank you, Officer Pierce. Alicia, baby, I want you to go with Officer Pierce. I'm going to make some calls, and then I'm coming to get you. Okay. Okay, Daddy. I love you. And baby, you didn't do anything wrong. None of this is your fault. Alicia started crying again, but this time from relief. I love you too. James hung up. The silence in the security office was deafening. Caldwell removed Alicia's handcuffs with shaking hands. Janet helped her stand. Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you somewhere comfortable. As they walked out, Alicia heard Caldwell behind them. How was I supposed to know her father was the Deputy Attorney General? Janet stopped and turned around slowly. Ryan, that's exactly the problem. You shouldn't need to know who someone's father is to treat them with basic human dignity. She's a child. She had a valid ticket and a valid ID. But you saw a young black girl in first class and assumed she was a criminal. I was following protocol. You were following your bias. And now you're going to pay for it. But here's the part that changed everything. The Delta Sky Club attendant gave Alicia water and tissues. Officer Pierce stayed with her, sitting at a respectful distance but close enough to provide comfort. I'm sorry, Janet said quietly, for what happened to you, for how you were treated. Alicia wiped her eyes. Does this happen a lot? More than it should. Officer Caldwell said someone reported my ticket as fraudulent. Who would do that? Janet hesitated. The gate agent, supposedly. But Alicia, I'm going to be honest with you. I've worked with Ryan for 5 years. This isn't the first time he's pulled something like this. What do you mean? He is a pattern. Young people of color, especially in premium cabins, especially flying alone. He finds reasons to question them, to detain them, to search them. Janet's jaw tightened. I've reported it to our supervisors 3 times. Nothing ever happens. Why not? Because Ryan's careful. He always has just enough justification. A report from an airline employee. A suspicious behavior observation. And the people he targets are usually too scared or too young to fight back. But I'm the Deputy Attorney General's daughter. Exactly. Which means for the first time, Ryan picked the wrong target. And your father has the power to do something about it. Alicia processed this. You think my dad's going to go after him? Janet smiled grimly. Honey, I think your dad's about to blow this whole thing wide open. She was right. 20 minutes later, Alicia's phone, which Sophia the flight attendant had kindly retrieved and brought to the Sky Club, started buzzing. Her father, then her mother, then her uncle Marcus, who was an attorney, then her godmother Renee, who was a federal judge. The Morgan family was mobilizing. But it was the call from her father's chief of staff that told Alicia how serious this was. Alicia, this is Patricia Chen. I work with your dad. Are you all right? I think so. Good. I need you to write down everything that happened. Every word Officer Caldwell said. Every action he took. Who witnessed it? Be as detailed as possible. Can you do that? Yes. Your father is on a plane. He'll be there in 2 hours. But in the meantime, we're already making calls. The Atlanta Airport Director, the Chief of Airport Police, the FAA, and Alicia. Yes. Your father also called the FBI. The FBI? Why? Because if Officer Caldwell has been racially profiling passengers, that's a federal civil rights violation. And your father is done playing nice with people who think black children are acceptable targets. Alicia felt something shift in her chest. Her fear was still there. The humiliation was still raw. But underneath it, something else was growing. The knowledge that she had people who would fight for her. That she didn't have to accept what had happened as normal or inevitable. That there would be justice. What she didn't know was just how deep the corruption went. James Morgan arrived at Hartsfield-Jackson like a force of nature. Alicia was waiting in the Sky Club with Officer Pierce when he walked in. A tall, broad-shouldered black man in an impeccable suit, his expression carved from stone. "Daddy!" Alicia ran to him. He caught her in his arms, and for a long moment, he just held her while she cried into his shoulder. "I've got you, baby girl. I've got you." When he finally pulled back, his hands were gentle as he examined the bruises on her wrists and arm. "Did they take pictures of these?" "Officer Pierce did," Janet said, stepping forward. "Sir, I'm Janet Pierce. I documented all of her injuries, and I'll be providing a full statement about what I witnessed." James shook her hand. "Thank you, Officer Pierce. I mean that. I'm sorry I didn't stop it sooner. You stopped it when you could. That matters." He turned to Alicia. "Baby, I need you to tell me everything. Start from the beginning." Alicia walked him through it all, boarding the plane, settling into seat 2A, the flight attendant Sophia being kind, and then the announcement that police were boarding to investigate a fraudulent ticket. "I didn't even know they were talking about me at first," she said. "Not until Officer Caldwell came straight to my row and asked for my ID." "What did he say exactly?" "He asked my name and age. Then he asked how I paid for the ticket. I told him my dad bought it for me. He asked what you did for work, and I told him you worked for the Department of Justice." He laughed. James's jaw tightened. He laughed. He said I was lying, that everyone like me has the same story. Then he said I stole the credit card and I was under arrest. "Did he read you your rights?" Alicia blinked. "No." James looked at Janet. "Did he?" "No, sir. He didn't." So he arrested a minor without reading her Miranda rights, without verifying her story, without calling a parent or guardian, and based solely on an unverified report from a gate agent. James pulled out his phone. "That's 4 violations right there." He made a call. "Marcus, it's me. I need you to fly to Atlanta tonight." "Yes. I'm filing a civil rights lawsuit, and I need you to handle it." "No, not through the DOJ. This is personal. I'm going after the airport police department, the individual officer, and anyone else involved." "Good. I'll send you everything." He hung up and made another call. "Judge Ashford, it's James Morgan. I need a favor." Alicia watched her father work with something like awe. This was a man who'd taught her to ride a bike, who made terrible pancakes on Saturday mornings, who cried at her school plays. But this was also the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, a man with power, connections, and resources most families could never access. And he was using every bit of that power for her. But what James Morgan discovered next would expose a conspiracy that went far beyond one racist cop. The investigation moved fast. Within 24 hours, the FBI had opened a civil rights investigation into Officer Ryan Caldwell and the entire airport police force. Within 48 hours, they'd uncovered something stunning. James sat Alicia down in their D.C. apartment. She'd finally made it home, on a flight where she'd been upgraded to first class and treated like royalty by a crew that had clearly heard what happened. "Baby, I need to tell you something about your case." "Okay." The FBI pulled all of Officer Caldwell's arrest records from the past 3 years. His detained or arrested 4 to 7 passengers. Want to guess how many were people of color? All of them. 4 to 5 out of 4 to 7. 9 to 6%. And here's the thing. Not one of those arrests resulted in actual charges. Not one. Because every single person he detained was innocent. Alicia felt sick. So has been doing this to people for 3 years. At least 3 years. But here's where it gets worse. James pulled up a document on his tablet. The FBI found emails between Caldwell and a group called Citizens for Aviation Security. Heard of them? No. Most people haven't. They present themselves as a passenger safety advocacy group, but they are actually a front for a white nationalist organization. Alicia's eyes went wide. Caldwell and 12 other airport police officers across the country have been coordinating with this group. They get tips about suspicious passengers, which is code for passengers of color in premium cabins. Then they detain them, humiliate them, and create arrest records that make it harder for them to fly in the future. That's insane. It's terrorism. Racial terrorism designed to make black people afraid to travel, to take up space, to exist in places where racists think we don't belong. Jamesy's voice was hard. And Alicia, the only reason we found out about it is because Caldwell messed with you. If he'd picked someone without resources, without connections, this would still be happening. The weight of that settled over both of them. What happens now? Alicia asked quietly. Now, the FBI is arresting all 12 officers involved. The DOJ is charging them with conspiracy to violate civil rights. And I'm personally going after every single entity that enabled this. The airport, the police department, the airlines that looked the other way. Will it make a difference? James cupped her face in his hands. Baby girl, you're going to help us send a message that this will not be tolerated. That black children are not acceptable targets. That racism in uniform is still racism, and it will be prosecuted. And just when things seemed like they were moving toward resolution, Alicia learned something that changed everything she thought she knew about her own story. The revelation came during a prep meeting with a legal team. Marcus Morgan, James's brother and Alicia's uncle, was walking her through what to expect if the case went to trial. Now, the defense is going to try to paint this as a simple misunderstanding, Marcus explained. They'll say Caldwell was following procedure, that he didn't know who you were, that there was no racial motivation. But there was, Alicia said. He literally said, you people. I know, and we have witnesses who will testify to that. But here's the thing. Marcus pulled out a file. We found something interesting when we pulled the gate agent's statement. The person who reported my ticket. Yes, except. Marcus slid a photo across the table. There was no gate agent. Alicia stared at the photo. It showed the gate area from that day. Time-stamped. Clear video. The airline has no record of any employee reporting your ticket as suspicious. The gate agents on duty that day all gave statements saying they never contacted airport police about you. Then who did? We think Caldwell made it up, James said, entering the room with Patricia Chen. We think he saw you, a young black girl in first class, and decided on his own to detain you. Then he fabricated the report to cover his actions. Can we prove that? We can. His radio logs show no incoming call from a gate agent. His report says he received information, but there's no documentation of where that information came from. He made it all up. Patricia jumped in, which means this wasn't just racial profiling. It was false arrest, false imprisonment, and filing a false police report. Caldwell's looking at criminal charges, not just civil rights violations. Alicia processed this. So he saw me and just decided I was a criminal. Yes, James said gently. Because I'm black. Yes. And if I hadn't been your daughter, if I'd been just some random black girl, nobody would have cared. The room went quiet. Baby, no. Dad, I need to say this. Alicia stood up, her voice shaking but strong. I'm lucky. I know I'm lucky. I have you. I have Uncle Marcus. I have Judge Ashford. I have all these people with power fighting for me. But what about the kids who don't? What about the black girl who got humiliated by Officer Caldwell 6 months ago and had nobody to call? We're trying to get justice for them too, Marcus said. We're filing a class action lawsuit on behalf of everyone Caldwell targeted. That's good. That's really good. But Alicia wiped her eyes. I want to do more. I want to testify. I want to speak publicly. I want every black kid who's scared to fly or go to the mall or exist in public spaces to know that what James looked at his daughter, his baby girl who'd grown up so much in the past few days, with pride and heartbreak. Are you sure? Once you go public, you can't take it back. The media will be intense. People will say terrible things. Defense attorneys will try to tear you apart. I'm sure. Then we'll do it together. Be honest. Would you have had the courage to speak out at 17? The press conference was held at the Department of Justice. Alicia sat at a table with her father on one side and Uncle Marcus on the other. Behind them stood Officer Janet Pierce, Flight Attendant Sophia, and 6 other victims of Officer Caldwell's racial profiling. The room was packed with reporters. James spoke first, laying out the facts, the false arrest, the conspiracy, the FBI investigation, the criminal charges Caldwell and his co-conspirators were facing. Then it was Alicia's turn. She was terrified. Her hands shook as she unfolded her prepared statement. The lights from the cameras were blinding. The weight of all those eyes on her was crushing. But she thought about the 4 to 5 other people Caldwell had targeted. She thought about every black child who'd been taught to be afraid. She thought about the world she wanted to live in. And she spoke. My name is Alicia Morgan. I'm 17 years old. 10 days ago, I was arrested on an A-plane for the crime of flying first class while black. Her voice steadied as she continued. Officer Ryan Caldwell put his hands on me. He handcuffed me. He dragged me off a plane in front of dozens of people who recorded it on their phones and did nothing to help me. He didn't verify my ticket. He didn't call my parents. He didn't read me my rights. He just saw a black girl in a place where he thought I didn't belong. And he decided I was a criminal. She looked directly into the cameras. But here's what Officer Caldwell didn't know. I have a father who's the Deputy Attorney General. I have an uncle who's a civil rights lawyer. I have resources and power that most black kids don't have. And that's exactly the problem. A murmur ran through the press corps. I shouldn't need a powerful father to be treated with basic human dignity. None of us should. The fact that Officer Caldwell only backed down when he learned who my dad was proves that this was never about safety or procedure. It was about putting me in what he thought was my place. Her voice grew stronger. I'm speaking today because I can. Because I have protection that other victims didn't have. But I want you to know their names too. She listed them. All 4 to 5 people Caldwell had targeted. Their ages, their occupations, where they were traveling and why. A college student heading to her grandmother's funeral. A businessman flying to a conference. A mother taking her daughter to visit a college campus. All of them treated like criminals for existing while black. These people had their dignity stolen. Their sense of safety violated. And for 3 years, nobody in power cared enough to stop it. That changes today. She folded her statement. I'm filing a civil rights lawsuit against Officer Caldwell, the airport police force, and every entity that enabled this system. I'm also calling on the FAA and TSA to implement new oversight measures to prevent racial profiling in airports. And I'm starting a foundation to provide legal support for travelers who face discrimination. The room erupted with questions. James fielded most of them, but one reporter directed a question straight to Alicia. Alicia, what would you say to Officer Caldwell if he was in this room? She thought about it. I'd say that I forgive him, because holding on to hate would only hurt me. But I'd also say that forgiveness doesn't mean no consequences. What he did was wrong. It was racist. It was illegal. And he needs to face justice, not just for me, but for everyone who came before me and everyone who might come after. That press conference changed everything. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Officer Ryan Caldwell was found guilty of violating civil rights, filing false police reports, and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison and banned from ever working in law enforcement again. His 11 co-conspirators across the country faced similar fates. The civil lawsuit resulted in a $15 million settlement paid by the airport authority, with $5 million going to Alicia and the rest distributed among the other 4 to 5 victims. The airport police department was forced to implement comprehensive anti-bias training, independent oversight, and a zero-tolerance policy for racial profiling. Delta, United, and American Airlines all announced new protocols for responding to passenger complaints and working with law enforcement. And Alicia Morgan, 17 years old, college-bound, forever changed, stood at her high school graduation 3 months later and gave the valedictorian speech. When I was arrested on that plane, she told her classmates, I felt powerless, humiliated, afraid. I thought about staying quiet, about letting my dad handle it privately, about just moving on with my life. She looked out at the crowd. Her parents, her uncle, Officer Janet Pierce, Sophia the flight attendant, and dozens of the people she'd helped through her foundation. But staying quiet would have meant that Officer Caldwell could keep terrorizing innocent people. It would have meant accepting that black children are acceptable targets for racist violence. It would have meant teaching the next generation that dignity is something we have to earn instead of something we inherently deserve. She paused. So I spoke up. And yes, it was hard. The media was brutal. Defense attorneys tried to paint me as a liar. People sent me death threats. But you know what? It was worth it. Because 4 to 5 people got justice. Because policies changed. Because maybe, just maybe, the next black girl who sits in first class won't have to be the Deputy Attorney General's daughter to be treated like a human being. The auditorium erupted in applause. Ending. The moral that night, Alicia's family gathered for a celebration dinner. Her mother, Dr. Kenya Morgan, raised a glass. To my brilliant daughter, who turned trauma into transformation. To Alicia, everyone echoed. After dinner, James pulled his daughter aside. I'm proud of you, baby girl. You know that, right? I know, Dad. But I'm also sorry. Sorry that you had to go through this. Sorry that even with all my power and position, I couldn't protect you from racism. Alicia hugged him. Dad, you did protect me. Maybe not from what happened, but from the aftermath. You made sure I got justice. You made sure other people got justice. You used your power the right way. You used yours the right way too. I learned from the best. They stood together, looking out at the DC skyline. What are you going to do with your settlement money? James asked. The foundation, mostly. Legal fees for people who can't afford attorneys. Travel vouchers for families who are afraid to fly after being profiled. And she smiled. I'm going to buy first-class tickets for 100 black girls to fly to their dream college for tours. Because we deserve to take up space. We deserve luxury. We deserve to move through the world without fear. James's eyes filled with tears. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You were just too busy making pancakes to notice. He laughed and pulled her close. Alicia Morgan's story went viral, but not the video of her arrest. The story that spread was her testimony, her press conference, her foundation, her refusal to accept that racism was inevitable or that black children were acceptable casualties. She became a symbol of resistance and resilience for a generation. But more importantly, she became a reminder that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about transformation. Officer Caldwell went to prison. Policies changed. Victims were compensated. But the real victory was the message that echoed across the country. Black children are not criminals for existing. They are not suspicious for achieving. They are not targets for occupying spaces that racists think belong only to white people. They are worthy. They are protected. They are loved. And anyone who forgets that will face consequences. Alicia's victory was more than personal. It reminded every black mother watching that their children deserve dignity, safety, and justice. That power used righteously can change systems. That speaking up, even when terrified, can transform pain into purpose. And most importantly, it reminded every young black person in America that they belong exactly where they choose to be. First class, front row, at the top. And nobody, not a racist cop, not a broken system, not centuries of oppression, gets to tell them otherwise.